We're just waiting for one more person, and that should be a matter of seconds. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Oh my goodness, maybe I didn't say that with enough enthusiasm to get a response back. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. That's better. My name is Van White, and it is my honor and my privilege to welcome you to tonight's event. We don't do enough of this in our community. That is recognize people who are making a difference, and they're making a difference not because a statute or a law said that they must make a difference, or not making a difference because someone's paying them a salary. They're not making a difference because they owe someone a debt. They're not doing it because it's written in some code that they're responsible for doing something on behalf of someone else. They're doing it, you're doing it, because you know it's important to serve. No one's motivating you by dollar or by sanction to do what you do. And that's what makes being a volunteer so special. We cannot turn this district around without the efforts of volunteers. I'm frequently heard to say, and I think it does frustrate some people, sometimes people in this building, that the Board of Education is not waiting for Superman. I know I stole that from a movie, and the theme of that movie was a bit different, but there is no Superman or Wonder Woman, no singular person who's going to turn this very troubled district on the right path. I said to somebody very recently, it is going to take every man and woman and child, black, white, rich, poor, to grab an oar in these very turbulent waters and make a direction towards towards the shore. We cannot do this on our own. If one person thinks they can grab an oar, we're going to go in circles. You know what happens when you grab one oar in a boat and nobody else is on the other side of the boat? It goes in circles. And by the way, and to repeat the theme of today, this cannot just be done by people who are being paid a salary. It absolutely cannot be done by people who are legally responsible to provide for children. It has to be done, and it has to be included with people who have a heart for service. And that is you all. And those people are people of all ages, all colors, all backgrounds. We will not make it through these turbulent waters without you all. And so on behalf of the Board of Education, not only do I say welcome, but more importantly, and quite sincerely, I say thank you. Bo's up. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the district, I too would like to welcome you and thank our individual volunteers and our community partners. I want to underscore what President White said, because I've only been here a short bit of time. But what excites me most are the conversations that we're having out there in the community, because I truly believe, too, that if this community, our community, is to fully realize its full potential, it's not going to be because of any one single effort on the part of any one individual or any one community group. It's going to be because we're all working together, because collectively we're harnessing our resources, and as President White said, rowing and pushing all in the same direction. This is a resource-rich community. The building blocks are here. The foundation is here. But we really need to develop focus and coherence in what we're doing, because the other essential part of this equation is centered around commitment. And I know that the commitment is here. People genuinely want to see us reach the finish line. People genuinely want to help our kids, to help our families. It's just a matter of all of us coordinating our effort in a way that's going to be impactful. And so Again, I'm thankful to all of our individual volunteers and all of our community partners for what you do each and every day in support of our kids and our families. Thank you and enjoy the ceremony.
So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nidia Padilla Rodriguez. Some of you may know me, others may not, but as the Director of Strategic Community Partnerships, I just want to thank you because I know that we have like over 50 community-based organizations and thousands of volunteers that give up your time, your commitment, your dedication to support the social, emotional, and academic needs of our students. We truly appreciate this, and we know that this is the first time we're actually establishing this opportunity to thank all of you. And believe it or not, this came about as a result of the Path Forward initiative and the community event that we had at Franklin High. So we wanted to embrace your suggestion and let you know we're paying attention, and this is just the beginning. And many of you must know that April is National Volunteer Month. Did you know that? So we want to make sure it's on our calendar for the district. Every year, we want to be able to continue celebrating, to thank you because we value your work. And of course, we couldn't do this without our volunteer coordinator, Ricky Frazier, who is going to take it on from here. So thank you.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to honor the volunteers and the work that I do, and I don't get a chance to go to all the schools to see the volunteers, but I know that quietly, without fanfare, you do the work to help our students. In my orientation, I always tell volunteers, when you look at that glass as being half empty or half full, as volunteers, you add to the glass being full. So I'm going to go directly into the program to recognize the volunteers. What I will ask at the end that all the volunteers come back up and take a picture with the commissioners. And then when I call your names, I'll also ask that if there's any representative of the school, that they come as well. So first we have our first volunteer that we're recognizing from Francis Parker School number 23 is David Beck. Our second volunteer, and I know she's not here, but if there's anybody from SOTA, a representative, I'll ask that they come. If not, we make sure that she get this. And the volunteer that we're recognizing for School of the Arts is Allison Bosworth. Our next volunteer is from Wilson Foundation, and that volunteer is Diane Graham. And so what I want to read, so just that everybody in the audience knows what it says Volunteer Service Award presented to whoever the honoree by the Board of Education and Superintendent of Schools for your generous commitment of time and support to serve our families and community, given this 26th day of April 2018, and is signed by our Board President Van Henry White and our Superintendent Barbara Dean Williams. And our next honoree From School Without Walls is Douglas Click. Our next volunteer we want to recognize is Eddie Leonard, and he's representing the Early Childhood School number 57. Our next volunteer we want to recognize from Clara Barton School number 2 is Patricia Pascal.
With the same teacher, wow.
I'm hearing them whisper periods of time as people have been volunteering. You all don't maybe hear some of this stuff. I've heard 11 years, 20 years. That deserves a standing ovation.
Our next volunteer recognized from Rochester International Academy, and he was actually featured on Channel 8 last year, I believe it was, is Jack Saucer. Next, we want to recognize individuals that represent some amazing partnerships that are in our schools. The first that we want to recognize is from the World of Inquiry School, number 58, is Marcy De Jesus, who represents the Buddy Readers Program. And there's some of the Buddy Readers as well. They came for support. The next community partnership we want to recognize is at the Eldon E. Stevenson School 29, which was actually my elementary school that I attended. And we're going to have Amanda Dwyer with Lawyers for Learning.
Lawyers for Learning has been with the district over 30 years.
Our next partnership we want to recognize out of the Dr. Walter Cooper School number 10 is Lee Loomis, who represents the Rochester Engineering Society.
No, don't say just 5, because 5 counts.
I don't have a group, so come on.
Thank you. Yep. Our next community partner we want to recognize is out of Pinnacle School number 35, the Third Presbyterian Church, and we're going to call Thomas Nilsson. The next partnership we want to recognize is from the St. Thomas Episcopal Church, the Robert Clementi School number 8, and we're recognizing Susan Pinkert.
We'll support you.
Our next recognition is from St. Paul's Episcopal Church, Adopt a Classroom at the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. School number 9, Paula Valeri.
Is there anyone here? No, I don't think so. We're here. Okay.
The next community partner we want to recognize is from the Help Me Read program at the Enrico Fermi School number 17, which is an amazing program at our Beacon School, and that is Linda Wallace Malding. And the last recognition that we're going to have, and I know the person is not here, but we want to honor the Pittsburgh Women's Club at the Charles Carroll School number 46. Let's give her a hand of recognition. So again, what I'm going to do is ask that all the people that have been recognized take one shot with the commissioners. And once we do that, after we take that picture, I'm going to turn the podium over to Dr. Linus Guillory, who's the Deputy Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, and he has some presentation of students to make. Thank you so much. If there's family members, schools, this is your opportunity to take some pictures. Feel free. Okay, all right.
Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Linus Guillory, Deputy Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. Tonight, we're paying tribute to our dedicated community volunteers and groups within the Rochester City School District. And as folks have said, this is National Volunteer Month. The board tonight also, so I'm going to ask you guys to come back up, we'll be presenting the Yes We Can. So President White, I don't know if you want to say a few remarks about this, but we're going to be presenting the Yes We Can Award to 3 MCC College scholarship recipients tonight. They're all receiving $1,000 scholarships to MCC. Board members, you'll remember that at our last ESA meeting, these are the students that came and presented to us. Our first recipient is Miss Jaden Buckhannon. She is a future graduate of the Rochester Early College High School. Please welcome Miss Buckhannon. Our next recipient is Mr. Michael Oliver. Mr. Oliver, did Ms. Webster step out? No, she's here. Ms. Webster, come on up, Ms. Webster. Mr. Michael Oliver is a future graduate of World of Inquiry, School number 58. And our last student, I hope he comes in and we can acknowledge him tonight as well, is Mr. Daniel Garwood, and he is a member. I see Ms. Nicastro in the back. He's a member, a future graduate of School of the Arts, and he's also a $1,000 scholarship recipient. But he has not arrived as of yet. So thank you, Ms. Nicastro. Thank you, board members. Thank you, volunteers. Tested. How are you all tonight?
We're asking for you to make some closing remarks.
You know, it's difficult to bring closing remarks in an event like this because it's hard to describe what you've seen. You know, when you hear people talk about 30 years, 10 years, 5 months, 5 years, I heard the gentleman say, oh, I've just had 5 years. No, 30 years is an incredible amount of time to serve. It really is. But 5 years is just as important because the children and the staff members that are in that boat that I referred to, it doesn't make any difference how long you're in the boat. If the boat is rocky and the seas are turbulent, you need somebody there, that minute, that second, to steady that boat. So we are thankful, we are very blessed for every minute, every hour, every week, every month, every year, every decade that you served us. And that is a message of thanks that goes to everyone in this room. God bless you and have a good evening. Hey, you guys. Woohoo. I made a major mistake. We talk about volunteers, and I said not everybody gets paid. And then there's some people that get paid, and then they go above and beyond their job. That would be Ricky and Nydia, and everybody else who support them. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. Well done, guys. Thank you.
Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Check 1, 2.
I could get. See you later. Okay, good evening, everybody. Looks like a skeleton crew, but it's all right. We begin every meeting with an act of reverence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I usually try to identify a young person, but ain't none here. Now, young is a relative term. There are some quote-unquote younger people here, but listen, I don't want to get myself in trouble. So, Bo, you kind of young, but let's see. Well, we can't do. We have a school. Oh, okay, all right, yay! Come on up. What's your name, sir? Samir. He is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thanks, Samir. Our flag is over here. There's a mic over there, Samir. Whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and for the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's give Shamir a round of applause. Shamir, before you sit down, Shamir, ho. Before you sit down, can you get the mic for a second? I want to talk to you for a minute. Where you go to school? School without walls, you said? Mm-hmm. All right. What year are you in?
I'm a junior.
You're a junior, okay. What's your favorite class?
I don't have one.
You don't have one? Okay, all right, that's fair. You think about college, working after you graduate? What you think about doing?
I'm already working. I work at Wegmans.
All right, let's give him a round of applause. Already working. I need you to talk to one of my kids. So you're working, and you work at part of the Wegmans Work Scholarship Program?
Not yet. I can apply next year, though.
Okay, all right, let's give him a round of applause to encourage him. Thank you very much, Shamir. We really appreciate you doing the Pledge of Allegiance for us. Thanks again. Mm-hmm. All right. So our next item on the agenda is we have to approve the minutes of our March 29th meeting. Can I get a motion? Been moved by Commissioner Funches, seconded by Vice President Powell. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Now, on this portion of the agenda, some of you may recall, because you've been here, we reserve for people from the community to talk to us and tell us what's going on. It may seem kind of strange because when people come up here and they talk, we don't respond. And the reason why we don't respond is this is really the community's time, the people's time to speak to us. And I got to tell you, and I've said this on a number of occasions, sometimes it's difficult not to say anything because people understandably get very frustrated with this district. They take that mic and they say what's on their mind, and that's a good thing. And we don't want to discourage people from doing that by providing our visceral, our response, our own anger, our own frustration. So I'm going to just tell you, people are going to say stuff, and you're going to think, well, why aren't they responding to that? We don't do that, because as a board, we've said we just want to listen. Sometimes it's just important to listen. So, having said that, I would ask Eric Hines to take the mic. Mr. Hines, are you here? I guess not. And how about Peter Birkin? I know I saw Mr. Birkin here.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you. I want to give everyone permission to stand back up, if you will, please. If you want. Just voluntary right now. How many people were bullied in school? Raise your hand if you've been bullied in school at some point. How many people saw bullying going on in school, at least? Okay. How many people not only been bullied, seen bullying, but were bystanders to bullying? Raise your hand. Okay, a lot of you raised your hand. Now, if you didn't raise your hand at this point, I would like to see you after the meeting so we could talk about what school you went to, because I'd like to send my son there. My son goes to West Irondequoit currently. He is a product of the city school district. He attended kindergarten at school number 23 years ago. He went there a half year. He got bullied so bad, I pulled him out and put him into private school. Who am I? I am Peter Birkin, and I help inspire people to bring out their unique genius. I worry about the school district as a whole. I worry about the school district as a whole. I am here to bring awareness that there are solutions to the many problems that we face in our public schools across the country. I created a blueprint to bully-proof people. The key is knowing that for every problem there is a what, there is a solution. My intent is to help as many people as possible and help implement the changes. I believe there can be peace in our schools, not only here in Rochester, but Monroe County and throughout the country. You ask how? We can make the change by letting me train staff and parents life coaching skills and processes. In addition, administer the passion test to all high school students, staff, and parents. I'm a former kindergarten through 12th grade teacher for the Rochester City School District. I taught everything from home hospital, where we had 90 home hospital teachers. I worked at Clinton Avenue Learning Center. I had 15 self-contained long-term suspended students. We had 150 in that school when I worked there, and we had no problems. We had one halftime sentry. At one point, we had 2 halftime sentries, only in the AM. They were off for the rest of the afternoon. The kids came on time. They took public transit to get there. They were respectful to oneself, others in authority. And when the teachers felt they were ready to go back to school, we recommended them back to school. We also had a transition teacher that brought the student back to school so they could transition back and acclimate themselves back to school. If there wasn't room at Clinton Avenue Learning Center, they went to home hospital, where our 90 very dedicated people would run around and knock on doors and find our students. If they moved, they were very transit, we'd run them down and still teach them. So again, I'm a certified life coach and passion test facilitator. I'm passionate about life. When my life is ideal, I'm helping this district and throughout the country and the world with this bully proofing. Because you know what? When we lose another child to suicide or anything self-harm, it makes me sad. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. All right. That is actually a pretty short speakers list. Normally, we're averaging probably at least 20 to 30. But thank you, Mr. Birkin, for taking the time to come out today and sharing your thoughts with us. All right. We then move to superintendent reports. Dr. Nelms?
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a relatively brief report this evening, and I just want to continue our focus on our attendance initiative. We are seeing gradual increases at this lower school, grades 6 through 8, and continue to track what's happening at the high school level. We definitely have a lot of work to do. We want to have that number around 90%, and the number of students that we continue to struggle with are kids who are overage, and you'll see that with the continuing bar. But we are at the point now where we have one of our administrators, we call her Leah the Lift. She's actually going out to homes at lunch and going to get kids and bringing them here to school, and that's been an initiative that's well received. I also would say to the board that in future considerations with RTS, we have to think about how we give students a second chance to get to school if they miss the first bus, because students are self-reporting that if they miss the first bus, then they can't get on another bus unless they pay, and that's been a hindrance and a burden. So I think in future negotiations, we have to talk more about the busing situation and how we allow students who might miss the first bus for a variety of reasons, could be oversleeping, but it also could be for child care or family care to get to school. RTS has been very flexible to their credit for individual students, but I think systemically that might be a barrier for attendance in some of our high schools. The behavior update, I won't go through all of that, but you will see, thanks, Tom. You'll see that we're trending in the right direction in terms of behaviors and total suspensions. We have seen a spike at lower school in 8th grade, and Dr. Wilson is working with a team of teachers there to mitigate some of that with students and doing a ton of peace circles and having family meetings for a group of kids who continue to get involved in conflict. But I'm very I'm very confident that our school social workers and counselors and administrative team can work with those families. And those parents have been very accommodating, and they've taken off work and come to school, and they've been engaged fully in that process. And so I appreciate that effort, but you'll see a slight spike in lower school for the last couple months if I showed you some of the disaggregated data. Just to remind our parents that upcoming math assessments are here. They're right around the corner. And I thank the students who have taken advantage of Saturday school and after-school tutoring sessions. We've done a ton of work with targeted interventions, trying to find the specific standards and skills that students struggle with and giving them targeted intervention. Not making the assessments stress kids out, but trying to use the assessments to have a more targeted approach to support. And that's been a monumental effort with our teachers, grades 6 through 8, and our teacher leaders. Just a reminder to the school board and to the community that this weekend we have the CUE Symposium. It's a Center for Urban Education Success. It's a spring symposium. We have had a number of teacher leaders, teachers, parents are involved in this, as well as our administrative team. Prepare for this day and working with a number of stakeholder groups. There'll be between 250 and 300 individuals in attendance on Saturday. Nearly every Monroe County school has an administrator or teaching team coming. I think it's over 150 RCSD teachers, mostly not teachers from East. And we have a school board member from Buffalo coming, as well as some political folks. So just remind individuals that if they want to come out the board, you're more than welcome to. You don't have to sign up, just show up. It's 9 to 2 o'clock, and the first sessions begin at 9:30, and they go through the evening. There's going to be a
Is there a keynote? Excuse me.
There's a keynote. The keynote is a professor from Syracuse University, and she's going to talk about literacy and engaging students of color, specifically in her research. Yep. And the keynote, I believe, is at 1? Okay. I believe it's at 12:30 or 1.
Thanks.
Yep. Just congratulations to the East United lacrosse team. They held a festival where there were a ton of students who showcased their talents. I want to give a special thanks to the City of Rochester, Carlos Cotto, and all the athletic directors throughout Rochester who have done a great job promoting lacrosse for all kids in the city. It has taken a team effort, and I want to thank Carlos Cotto for helping to organize and push the program throughout the district. And they won their first game a couple weeks ago. They won pretty big out in Batavia. And they're competing day in and day out. So again, if you have a chance to come out and see lacrosse this year, those kids are working extremely hard and getting better. Logan Newman is an individual at East who just received the Life Changer of the Year award. Only 17 recipients received this out of 800 nominees. Logan is the individual best known for producing glasses for kids throughout the city. This year, I believe the number of glasses that will be delivered will be well over 1,200. And so he continues to push that. And he was recognized by a former student, actually, who we hired as a paraprofessional to help out in that classroom. She nominated him, and he and his family were surprised on Superintendent's Conference Day with the award. He's well received. He's one of many teachers doing incredible things for the community. I'm happy that Logan and his family were able to be recognized on this past week. The upper school debate team, after many years of trying, they finally won the high school upper school debate competition. I want to thank the University of Rochester staff who have helped train our students, but also the number of teachers at East who spend countless hours supporting them in their development to compete. These kids were extremely happy to come back with first place. And their first question was, who keeps the trophy? And so the trophy is on display in the main office for all to see. And so I really thank those individuals and those kids for trying hard. They were extremely, extremely happy, and the topics were of importance to them. And then last but certainly not least, we have, I want to thank all the students so far who've really transitioned themselves towards a college-going culture. And our counselors and social workers put together this wall if you walk into East. Every time a student receives an acceptance letter, it gets posted. And many of our kids are receiving scholarships. We're trying to track the dollar amount right now so we can report on that at the end of the year. But we have a ton of students who will be attending various colleges throughout New York State. I also want to thank some of the private donors in the community who have volunteered to send care packages or pay for books or computers to support these students and their parents with their transition. There's been a lot of silent angels out there who are donating considerable amount of funds to help kids transition to college so they are able to persist and so that money is not one of their main barriers and obstacles. And then on March 4th, there's a track invitational at 4:30 at East. And what's unique about this is it's a co-ed track invitational. So the boys and girls will run together in various meets. That's a citywide invitational, and it's May 4th at 4:30. And that concludes my report.
Dr. Nelms, a couple of quick questions, sort of a bullet series of questions. If you go back to your attendance update, I notice it says 91 for grade 6, 92, 90, 83.
Yep.
What cohorts are the grade 6, 7, and 8? Does that represent the students that you've taken in since you guys have taken over?
It would be up and through grades 11, actually.
All right.
So it depends on, so the grade 11 kids, we've had grades 9, 10, and 11. But the kids that we've had who entered middle school in their first year would be the kids entering 9th grade next year. So it depends on when kids come in, because you can come in 6th grade or 7th grade. But we've had, every kid in grades 11 have been, in 10 and 9 have been with us for at least 3 years.
All right, so I'm looking at grade 9.
Yep.
The attendance rate is very, very low.
Yep.
How can you explain that?
So there's two things. The 83% are all 9th graders. So this will include kids who are 9th grade by credits. So it could be a kid who's 20 years old, counting in that grade 9 number. The new next to that are kids who are first-time 9th graders.
Right.
And then the continuing.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's how it reads. So it's
so 9 is broken down to new and continuing.
Right. So the
I see.
83 is made up of the 88 and 63.
I get it. Okay.
Yep.
And the continuing are overage, undercredited?
These are kids who are typically in Freedom School, which is our task preparation program. They're in our Quest program, trying to catch up on credits. Or some of those kids are actually transitioning to Job Corps.
Okay. Next question, if you go to your college-bound presentation,
Yep.
do you guys have a baseline for when you took over? In other words, the percentage of kids, young folks that went to college when you took over at East and what it is now?
We don't, and I know that the National Clearinghouse is they are creating a database for that for all schools to track. Because even if we know the colleges the kids got accepted to, we don't know if they actually attended or if they persisted and finished 9th grade and continued on to 10th. So I know the National Clearinghouse is actually tracking that data nationally to see if kids are going through and persisting. I know I think they're in the final stages of having that clean and ready. I know it's available for some schools, some public schools, but not private. So I believe that's one of the tracking mechanisms that will be used nationally for all schools.
It's one thing to know that your kids are graduating and we're increasing the graduation rate, but are they college or workforce ready?
Right.
So to have that as a measure, an objective, I think would be critical. So
the other thing we're tracking internally as well is and it's hard to track averages, but because it's messy. But trying to see if, as more kids pass certain key benchmarks, like the Regents living environment or math, are they getting higher scores on those? Are they reaching the 80? Right. So I know you've been at East a number of times. You'll see on our walls 22, 5, 80, 22 credits, 5 Regents, and 80 or higher on each exam. And so we encourage as many kids to take the exam as possible until they reach an 80. That's been the culture that Marlene Blocker has insisted occur. And so we try to use that 80 benchmark in all those areas. And so we were seeing a number of kids retaking exams, a number of kids receiving 80s, but we don't have a clean system to say how it's compared to previous years. And the more kids you have taking past exams, the average gets distorted. So that's something that we are tracking, not just the passing rate, but the average score on those exams as well.
And then I just have one other quick question. I know I wasn't there. I know Ray presented at ESA regarding the graduation rate and where we're at.
Yep.
Have you presented to ESA or have you made any recent presentation about where our kids are at in terms of the finish line graduating? We're 2 months away.
I have not personally shared that. I've shared that with the district, with Barb and others, that we've talked about preliminary numbers. So I'm not certain if Ray added that in his presentation or not, but I did see the presentation. But
Ray, are you here? Are his numbers included in your numbers?
So we actually have a subcategory. We can resubmit that for you.
So when you presented to ESA, and I apologize to Commissioner Shepherd that I was not there, she chairs ESA, but the data for East was in your presentation?
It was in a section of the presentation.
Okay.
So we can, but I'll talk with Sean.
yeah, I didn't see the presentation, but I mean, yeah, I can definitely share that. I know that right now we're projecting between 58 and 60%, 55 and 60% graduation rate this year.
And when you guys took over, that's, for me, that's the baseline.
Yeah.
When you took over, you were projected to
30,
be what?
it was projected at 19, we got to 33, I believe.
In your first year?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? All right, thank you very much,
Yeah,
Dr.
thank you.
Nelms. Bo is going to do his best to imitate Barbara Dean Williams. I don't know. Good luck.
I am Barbara Dean Williams for one night only.
Command performance.
That's right, command performance. Good evening, commissioners, community members. Tonight, I'm going to be presenting in place of the superintendent who is out of district. Our presentation is going to focus specifically on elements of Path Forward, and so to begin, I just want to again thank all the administrators and teachers, employees, community members who gave of their time and talent in support of this work. It's very complex work, oftentimes very difficult work, but you know, the work to develop coherence across our system is so extremely important. And tonight, we're just going to look specifically at those elements of Path Forward pertaining to student placement and redesign recommendations for School 44. So just to remind you all, Path Forward was initiated through a series of resolutions which required us to look specifically at our current managed choice policy, asked us to do a deep analysis of seat capacity within the district and feasibility as it pertains to regional schools. And so the purpose of this evening is to provide a recommendation, as I said, for student placements and distribution of students across the district, and then we'll talk specifically about a recommendation for the future of School 44. So in terms of our approach, the overall goal was to promote quality schools throughout the city, and we used some specific criteria when evaluating what would be best as it pertains not only to student placement, but school redesign and other aspects of Path Forward as well. So we looked at equity in terms of programming and opportunities for students across the district and across the city as they are established by zone. Constituency acceptance, so what we heard when we were out in the community in terms of what parents and community members wanted to see in our schools both now and in the future. Cost, money isn't everything, but we want to be responsible stewards. And so that is something that we looked at in terms of our evaluation. And then lastly, complexity of implementation. In other words, how difficult, or in some cases, how disruptive is an option going to be to implement. So in looking at option one related to student placement, option one is to consistently apply parent preference / managed choice with fidelity. This is our current policy, to include resolutions for neighborhood school options specific to School 17, 33, and 16. So essentially, this is really about creating some neighborhood options, but fixing our current managed choice policy. And I'm going to resist the urge to read all of these advantages, but I want to highlight a few. The first being that it's designed to provide high-quality options and choices for parents. And it's directly connected to our RISE model for redesign. And essentially, I think the biggest advantage is really that the policy exists currently. So when we talk about, going back to the evaluation criteria that we used, that's a real advantage when we look at the complexity as far as the implementation goes, because that would be least disruptive to our system. It's also, our current policy is designed to promote equity, and there are specific recommendations that we can put in place that will improve equity across the system, and we've already taken some steps to do that. I think the real challenges with our policy pertain to the quality of options that exist for students and families across the city. Again, you know, this is an option that certainly is designed to promote equity, but we have some work to do as far as our current situation goes. And again, looking at what programs exist in what schools and what areas of the city, that is still an issue as it pertains to our current policy that's in place. But this is a policy that we feel would be least disruptive in terms of its implementation and in terms of the options that we're talking about. This is probably the option that we would recommend to the board above all else. Option 2 is centered around a neighborhood schools model, so designing and creating neighborhood schools and feeder patterns over time. But as we make this transition, we would have to keep our current managed choice policy in place. And there are some real advantages to this option as well, in terms of having quality schools in all neighborhoods and close to home. We believe that there would be a real advantage in terms of providing stability and strengthening neighborhoods. And when we look specifically at transportation and efficiency related to transportation, there would be some real options. There would be some real benefits there as well. I think in terms of challenges, what we heard when we were out in the community is this, that parents don't want to give up choice. Most people are in favor of having high quality schools within their neighborhood, but folks said, I like the option to choose. And what we heard over and over again is having neighborhood schools is a real benefit if you like your neighborhood school. But if you don't like your neighborhood schools and you don't have any other alternatives on the board, then it can be problematic. And so when we talk about challenges or a downside, that really is the disadvantage. And when and just to clarify, when we talk about developing a community schools model, we would be talking about K-6 or K-8 and keeping our current managed choice policy in place for high schools because of the way that it's set up. And the last option is centered around what's called a multi-dimensional socioeconomic model. And this is a newer model that would require us to collect a lot of different data sets that we currently aren't collecting. Data that is specific to a child's assessment performance, or data that's centered around things like education level of parents. There are some advantages to this option as well. There are other districts that have piloted across the nation and have seen some success with it, but it would be, you know, to go back to that criteria around looking at it through an equity lens and constituency support and cost and complexity of implementation. When we look at the disadvantages, they're really centered around how difficult it would be to implement, the cost associated with that. This would be a very time-consuming implementation, which would require a lot of further study and probably a lot of outside support. Our team felt like this is a model that we should continue to look at as an option in the future, but that this would not be the best option for the district right now. Again, just to reiterate, we feel that the best option that we have on the table is really to fix what we have in place. Because, as I said, there are some concrete recommendations, some things that you could do right now over the course of the next 6 months, which would make a difference and would allow us to operate in a much more efficient manner when it comes to student placement. as I said, we also have been working on specific recommendations as they pertain to School 44. You'll remember that there were 2 resolutions which called for the closure of School 44, and then subsequently another resolution which asked that we delay that decision until we move through the path forward process. And so the recommendation is to, the purpose is to provide a recommendation for the Lincoln Park School.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, that wasn't me.
I know, no, not that, just, it's a lot in my head.
So the purpose of, at least in part of tonight's presentation, is to provide a recommendation. And so the recommendation is to keep School 44 open and to develop it as a robust community school. We feel that there would be opportunities to expand equity and programming across the district, especially as it pertains to special ed programming and bilingual services. Through our community engagement sessions, especially in the 19th Ward, it was made clear to us that the community and families there wanted to see us keep that school open. So the recommendation is to keep it open. And again, this provides us with some additional opportunities for students and families to remain in that current school location and gives us some flexibility in terms of seat capacity within that respective area of the city. When we talk about, is there a disadvantage to this recommendation? Yeah, there are a couple disadvantages as they pertain to seat capacity and budget. As budgets become more challenging, the costs associated with the number of schools will need to be assessed. There would be a cost savings associated with the closure of that school, which benefits the district in difficult financial times. And so down the road, that may be something that you have to assess, is the number of schools serving children. But we feel like there is a benefit to keeping it open, especially as we evaluate the decision against our criteria around equity, around constituent support, cost, and implementation. We feel that there are real benefits across the board there. There certainly isn't going to be a significant additional cost associated with keeping that building open, but from a financial perspective, you won't realize any savings either. There isn't going to be a heavy lift as far as implementation goes, because what we're proposing is keeping the school intact and adding some capacity as it pertains to programming there. And there is strong support in the 19th Ward and in other parts of the city to keep that school open, and as I said, it does help us if we are focused through our redesign models and through our student assignment policy on creating equity across the city. It does help us to serve more children, especially children requiring specialized services and bilingual instruction. And so at this point, I'll open it up for questions, comments, and remarks.
This is actually directed more to Commissioner Powell. I'm trying to recall the specifics of managed choice as it should be done, if it were to be done in fidelity. In terms of neighborhood, the criteria around each school, is it 0.5 miles, and then there's a percentage? What was that? What were those numbers around that?
Yeah, when managed choice was developed, the concept was that 30% of the seats would be dedicated to those who lived within a half-mile radius. There's no point in the history of managed choice where more than 30% was needed to accommodate the children whose families chose to go to their neighborhood schools. They get what's called proximity preference, just, and since that threshold of 30% has never been reached, it's tantamount to a guarantee. If not all 30% are taken, then it's added to the remaining 70% for those available, those seats available for children within the zone but outside that half-mile radius on a lottery basis.
So I can say that when I was running my task force on this most recently, that one of the strongest recommendations, and that was last year, was that we increase the mileage and look at that percentage amount. You know, no recommendations specifically, but just to look at that because 30% had never been reached and 0.5% didn't capture many people at all. And so that would be a way to hit fidelity of this in a way that seemed to satisfy more families with that, you know, still keeping the schools open to the majority of kids from elsewhere.
If the board were to support this recommendation, we would still have an opportunity to take it up as the policy up and alter and study and discuss altering the radius from half-mile to three-quarter-mile. When the board originally studied this, the board's recommendation was 3/4 of a mile, but in the administrative translation, it became a half-mile. Also, we envisioned a three-quarter-mile radius. That is, anyone who, you know, as you drop a circle around the city.
As the bird flies.
But
right,
as soon as you calculate it as the car drives, there are fewer households that would qualify for a half-mile. So there's a lot of argument in favor of going to a three-quarter-mile. More of the city would be covered. Fewer homes would not have a school they could call their neighborhood school. But our first decision is, do we keep managed choice in the first place?
Commissioner LeBron?
Yes, so a few things. In your pathway 3 options, you put disadvantages that it promotes diversity across the school. So that may be typos, so I just want to point that out. Secondly, I want to talk about specifically.
That is a typo.
Okay. I want to point that out because this becomes public record. I want to point out when you talked about expanding School 44 and creating a robust community school at 44, I just want to acknowledge and point out that they already have a robust community school at 44. And when we talk about special education, we have to make sure that if we're adding more special education at 44, that we're properly staffing it. Because right now, we added more special education in the fall. We gave them a 5-day notice during winter break in February, and we did not adequately support that school or those teachers with those kids. And as a result, they're struggling with those students right now. In addition, when we talk about the challenges, I would say that we cut chiefs and contractual staff workers, and that's where we get our money. When we talk about cutting funding, and we talk about cutting funding from downtown, we often are looking at low-hanging fruit employees, and we need to be looking at higher-up chiefs as well. And in addition, I want to apologize to Bo because I feel like he's going to take the brunt of this, and I have a lot of respect for Bo. I do, absolutely. But Barbara Dean Williams should be the one presenting this, and Barbara Dean Williams should be the one here. And since I've been here, even in January when I wasn't sworn in, she has been at 2 out of the 5 last board meetings, which are scheduled regularly. She's well aware of them, just like I am. Her schedule is just as busy as mine. I get it. She was here earlier. She was prepared to be here today. And this is actually came up as a result of a conversation that the board had earlier this week. This was not going to be the presentation. So I see you shaking your head over there, Commissioner Willis. So with all due respect, I know for a fact that this was not the presentation she was going to be presenting today. So I just want to throw it out there that she should be the person, because these are some of the feedbacks and issues that I have currently in terms of deflecting and putting her staff up to take the hot seat when she should be the person presenting here today.
Let me just clarify.
I wanted to put that on the record, ma'am.
No, absolutely. That's absolutely you're right, but I need to put something on the record. We met, as you all know, we have Barbara instituted a practice whereby she meets with the officers. Last year it was Cynthia and I, and this year it has been Will and I. And an issue came up an urgent issue came up respecting the need to talk to the Commissioner of New York State Education, Commissioner Elia. We were concerned about the state. I'll be very upfront with you. Everybody was concerned about what was going to happen to 41. Because at the time, 41, as you all know, is a receivership school. And they are in their last year, and the board has all agreed that what we would do is try to create a new school. And even with that, as you all know, the New York State said they were going to appoint a monitor. Well, Beth Massetti-Miller, I don't know if she's here, but Beth has been sort of leading that effort. The problem was the state liked the model that we had developed at 41, but told us to stop our planning process because Commissioner Elia had not yet appointed a monitor, which is required when you transform, when you close a school and open a new one up. So everyone was concerned, wait a second, we got to go. We were ahead of the game in creating this new school at 41, but we couldn't go forward. The state said we couldn't go forward. As of yesterday, we were waiting for the state to identify who the monitor was going to be. We didn't know who that monitor was going to be, so we said, Barbara, somebody, I'm keeping it real, I'm telling you what the conversation was, somebody's got to go to Albany and talk to her and say, we need to know who the monitor is. And I want to be, you didn't know this, Beatrice, there wasn't enough time to tell you all this, but I said to Barbara, I'm telling you what I said, Barbara, listen, if there's, because people are going to expect that you're going to talk about 41 and path forward. I will tell them, and I apologize to you, I'm telling you late, but the plan was for me to tell you all why she was not here. That is why she is not here. She was going to go to Albany.
She hasn't been here, though. That's my point. You're talking about today's meeting, and I'm talking about there have been multiple meetings since I've joined the board that she has not been here, and I just want to put that on the record.
That is a separate issue, and I'm not responding to that. I'm just responding to the issue about today. We were in a meeting yesterday, and we said it was imperative that somebody reach out to Commissioner Elia, have a one-on-one, and talk to her about the urgency of what was happening at 41. We need to have that plan approved, because here was the problem. It's a domino. If you don't identify who the monitor is, and you don't identify who the principal is, then you can't pick staff. And teachers have already transferred out of that school. So it was urgent that we have someone communicate with the commissioner in real time and look her in the face and say, hey, listen, this whole plan is going to fall apart unless you get together. Now, again, you've pointed out something else. I'm not addressing that. All I'm speaking to is why she was not here today. That's all. What you say is on the record. We should be talking to Barbara about that. You should be talking to Barbara about that. But with respect to today, I'm obligated to tell you that is why she's not here. Just today, all right? You set? Anything else? Just want to make sure you're set. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Shepherd?
So I know what the managed choice policy is specifically referred to elementary schools. I mean, is the plan, will we hear about high schools within these plan options, or like what is that going to look like?
When I talked about implementing, we talked about implementing option 2 as a K-6 or K-8 model, which would be centered around developing neighborhood schools. But option 1, when we talk about our current managed choice policy, we will be talking about our current policy as it exists, looking at it and doing it and implementing it more effectively all the way up. Sorry, I wasn't clear about that.
So then does that mean like our policy needs to be changed? Because it specifically says elementary schools. It doesn't say anything about high schools.
I'm sorry, you trailed off. I couldn't hear what you said.
I said it specifically says elementary schools in the policy, so.
That's because the managed choice only ever was implemented or designed to be and implemented as the elementary school choice system. High schools and by default the middle schools, because they became 712s, have always been citywide draw, and over the years even more so as our quote-unquote comprehensive schools were phased out. Every high school has its own unique programs, and so to apply, for instance, zone boundaries to our high schools would be to cut off very important choices for students. For instance, the students that lived in the Northeast would have access to everything in Edison, but all the other two zones wouldn't have access to the CTE programs at Edison. And that would apply. If we had applied the zone system to high schools, or if we were considering doing that in the future, that would have repercussions in terms of not allowing our high school students the full range of choices, unless and until we get to the place where we can replicate every CTE program in each zone. That's how we would solve that equity problem.
Yeah, so I mean, the three choices are based around trying to make the district more equitable across Rochester. So I wanted to make sure that if we're talking about resources going into schools, that maybe the programs won't be as big as their specialized school. So like, just for example, Edison CTE, maybe we might have a smaller program offered on the east side of town or something like that. But I just wanted to make sure that we're addressing high schools in one of these options so that they're not left hanging and people are just doing what they want to do.
Can I speak to that just for a second? As I said before, when I was talking about the policy only relating to elementary students, I was speaking specifically to option 2. In option 1, I think where we talk about, you know, some of the changes that relate to the policy specific to high school is where we get into that equity conversation, right? Is increasing opportunities in our highly selected programs, and then also looking to expand seat capacity and develop more of a fair share model as it pertains to placement for students who require specialized services and bilingual education.
Commissioner Funches?
Okay, I had 2 questions. One, I'm going to do the second one first. In relation to School 44, and when you talk about increasing capacity around special ed, historically, when you have schools and when you add special ed classrooms, you put schools out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
And our schools end up on the list because you're putting them out of balance of gen ed and special ed classrooms. And I'm just making a request that when you're looking at doing this, that you don't throw the schools out of balance, because historically what's happened when you go to do an expansion, you throw schools. So just for for people to know that you have a balance of students, of general ed students and special ed students in a school. And in that school, when you talk about testing and how many kids reach proficiency and however, that whole thing, when you throw a school out of balance by the number of special ed kids, you push schools that were doing well, you put them in danger.
Yep.
So can we really be more thoughtful and deliberate when we do this, when you're looking at School 44, to make sure that we don't create a new problem in trying to, do you understand what I'm asking?
I thoroughly agree with what you're saying, and please know that that has been at the forefront of that conversation. I think that we proposed it as a possibility. I think if that school, if it's the will of the board to keep School 44 open and to fully develop it to further develop it as a community school, it presents an opportunity to add some capacity there. But you are absolutely right, and we should proceed with caution if we add special education seats, because you're absolutely right. If you aren't careful, you can put a school in peril in terms of its accountability status if you're not thoughtful about that approach. So we've had that conversation, and I believe the message is received, and I can't agree with you more that we're gonna have to be very careful as we are having conversations about adding programs in schools across the city.
I mean, I'm saying that specifically to School 44 because that's the subject on the table tonight.
Agreed.
But I would like to say that to all of our schools, because we have seen schools that were doing well, that when we did this flipping, that we were not deliberate, we were not thoughtful and intentional, and we put schools in peril. So I would like to see that happen.
You're absolutely right.
And that ties into my other question, which is for Commissioner Powell around the managed choice. What was the rationale behind the half-mile versus three-quarter-mile when I know that, like, to align it with our transportation, which is 1.5 miles? You know, if we want to make a community school, which is a walker school, basically.
Yeah, I agree.
And if our transportation standard is 1.5 miles, Why are we making 0.5 miles? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. The question is a very good question, and I'm glad you're asking it. When the board studied it, and we studied it for a full year, separate and apart from the work the administration did, we asked for a map of what it would look like if you just drew a radius around all of our elementary schools, and different size radiuses. And we found that and we also knew that families were, even 18 years ago, 17 years ago, families were saying 1.5 miles is too far.
Right.
Well, we discovered that when you draw a radius around our elementary schools that's 3/4 of a mile in radius, you have covered the entire city, with the exception of the cemeteries on Lake Avenue and part of Beach Drive up there in
Up in
Charlotte,
Charlotte.
right? That's it. Virtually every household would have a school, at least one school,
That was a
often
neighborhood.
more than one school that they could submit as their proximity preference. I cannot tell you the rationale of how it got changed from 3/4 mile to 1/2 mile, because that happened during the 18 months that I was off the board, and the policy was actually adopted after I left the board. And I have said it was problematic ever since, but it got even worse when you stop talking about it as the crow flies and start talking about it as the car drives. Then you have a lot of households that do not have a school that counts as their neighborhood school. So then we had to backfill it with another system to assign, so that every family could at least lay claim to one school as their neighborhood school, or their where they would get proximity preference. Because the one thing we wanted as a board to do was make sure, because we do value the neighborhood schools, we did want families to have a school that they would, have a virtual guarantee of getting into. We wanted to encourage walking to school, and so the combination of going to a 1/2 mile and then going as the car drove is very problematic. I can't explain how we got there, but I've been unhappy with it ever since. And it's just been, you know how the federal government put off changing No Child Left Behind because, well, we did that, it was too hard, and we're not going to look at it again. That was kind of the way it was here, is like, we just went through a year of board study and a year of administration, working together to figure out how we would implement this. We don't want to change anything, right? And it's been like Sisyphus pushing a stone up a hill to try to get anybody to even listen to talking about changing it back to a 3/4 mile. But I think we should look at that.
I'm good.
Commissioner Hallmark?
So just to add to Commissioner Funches's question, I would personally be in favor of increasing that mileage and maybe even up to 1.5 miles because it makes sense. But my question was, is there any disadvantage, or did the Path Forward team look at what the disadvantages would be of increasing to up to 1.5? Has that question even been asked? Do you know off the top of your head?
But
Just
now,
curious.
I would like to just indicate as a parent, 1.5 miles, depending on where you are in the city, is bad. It's really far. Because 1.5 miles, and the only reason I asked the question because it wasn't established. Because it's an established thing that we all know, saying we know that 1.5 miles is the cutoff for transportation. So if we're saying below 1.5 miles, you walk to school. But I just want to say that I'm not saying that 1.5 miles, because depending on what school it is and where it is, having worked in a school, depending on where you are in the city, 1.5 miles can be a very bad walk.
Oh, well, that's a
Right.
separate thing. The
Right.
walk is a separate thing from increasing the mileage actually gives households
wider-
access to
more
more
access.
schools, which is a good thing generally. So you're not being forced, you're actually being given more choices if the mileage were increased. So I would just be interested in looking at that.
So,
And
Bo,
I'll just reiterate that we had heard at the time, many, many parents saying 1.5 miles is too far to walk. So we bore that in mind when we were asking the
To
question,
3/4
how big a
around.
circle does how big a space do you create that gives every family access to a neighborhood school, a school that's technically walking distance, that, and is.
Right. 3/4 of a mile is fair. I mean, but that's not what we got, but 3/4.
Right.
But I'm good. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so that's something to work on with transportation,
But
is to get coverage for.
So summing
more
up this
mileage.
conversation,
Yes.
what is the administration's next move? What will we see next in terms of these options? Will they be presented in greater detail? What's the next move? Do you know?
Yeah, and I would probably ask Carl to speak to the next step. I would think that this information would have to go before ESA and Policy Committee, but I'll defer to Carl to provide some color commentary on this.
Good evening, Commissioners. In due course, what would normally happen with any recommendation is that it would be staffed through the board's committees, if that was the will of the board. The committees then would consider, specific resolutions that would then be recommended to the board for adoption, and then in its various parts, the board would be able to consider and adopt, each of the recommendations in turn. So that essentially would be the process. In terms of School 44, I think the written recommendation that is in your materials tells you that if the board is favorable toward adopting a resolution, there will be one that would implement that recommendation that you heard tonight in the May 24th packet.
Can I just add, not necessarily what we heard tonight, because what I heard tonight was turning it into a community school without actual input from the families at 44 and that school and that community. But I do want us to have a new resolution by the May meeting to indicate that it stays open. So I just want to throw that in the record too.
Commissioner, one of the things I saw in the recommendation, I didn't participate in this, so I can only reiterate what I read, but one of the things I saw in the recommendation is that the future of School 44 has been discussed extensively in the community, and that there is community support to keep the school open.
Yeah, but not in the proposal that Bo presented today on behalf of Barbara Dean
Forgive me,
Williams
I
today.
can't speak
No,
to
no,
that
that's
because I
okay.
wasn't there.
I also just want to add that a lot of this listening tour for the path forward and stuff in the Southwest particularly, there was a lot of feedback for the Southwest that there was only one physically done in the Southwest. The other one was done at like Jiva Theater or something for the Southwest, but that's not physically in the Southwest. So that was their feedback, and I would still like to give the Southwest people an opportunity to have some additional input in all of these discussions.
Go ahead.
And all right, because going by, piggybacking off of what Commissioner LeBron was speaking about, when we're talking about a community school, because words matter, and are we talking community, like a community school like 17 community school, Beacon School, or are we talking about just a home school? Because the thing is, if we talk, because what I'm hearing and what Commissioner's saying, that it seems like we're talking about two different things.
So that's a good question. When we talk about community schools, I guess there are some different categories of community schools. So there are community schools that are funded through our community schools grant. But then when we also talk about community schools that are not necessarily, developing community schools that aren't necessarily being funded by the grant, but essentially provide expanded learning opportunities for kids, mental health services to students, and support for families. When we talk about growing out that model, at least right now, that school would not be included in the community schools grant, but looking at developing a model that is inclusive of the community, supports expanded learning opportunities after school and in off months, provides mental health services, and certainly there would be some challenges when you talk about developing that model, some space challenges because that's an older, aging facility, and also some financial challenges because it's not included in that grant. But the idea is we would want all of our schools to become community and invitational schools, and as we're going through facilities modernization, that's one of the things that we're building into the plans, regardless of whether a school is part of the grant. We're trying to renovate those spaces so that they can accommodate the community and mental health services and family support services.
So what I'm hearing and what you're saying is that you would want this school to become a robust neighborhood school.
Well,
I mean, because the reason I'm harping on this is because words matter.
Yeah, I agree.
And when we've used the terms community school to mean a particular thing, right? So when people look at a community school, they think a particular thing. So we need to be very, and I'm not asking you to identify this tonight, but as we move forward, just like as we move forward, I want us to be intentional and deliberate about the language that we use to classify something, so that when the community looks at it, we all know what we're looking at. Because if we're saying a community school means this, but this is not really this. This is kind of like this. Is it or is it ain't?
So let me try and provide some specificity around that. We use the term community school. We didn't use the term neighborhood school purposely. And again, this is something we talked about in tonight's presentation, whether or not we wanted to use that language. I would say I can tell you what I heard when we did community engagement in that area of the city, and what I've heard in attending a neighborhood educational meeting a couple weeks ago is that there is a want in that area of the city to make that a neighborhood school, right? And when we talk about neighborhood schools, we're talking about proximity and physical space, right? Like kids going to a school that's in the neighborhood that they live in. And so I think generally speaking, there's a want for that. When we talk about community schools, we're talking about connecting core instruction to family services, to expanded learning opportunities in a school that may or may not be part of the community schools grant.
Right. Because all I'm saying, and this is my last thing on this, is that we just, to make sure that we're clear in our communication about what it is, because what I would not want to see is people see that we do a halfway community school when it was never, I mean, I want us to define what we're doing and do whatever we define well according to what we call it. Does that make sense?
Yep. Somebody asked me a similar question, it was also 19th Ward School, pertaining to 16. Is that going to be a community school? Well, the idea is, that it would be a community school. It's built out to accommodate community services, but it's not a school that is within the range of community school. It's not funded through the community schools grant at this point in time, if that makes sense.
So a couple things are clear to me. It is not clear what 44 will be, and so there apparently has to be some additional conversations about that. It is clear that 44 will stay open. That much, it's intended to stay open. But I think there's some concern about what it will become. And we all know the distinction between a neighborhood and a community school, but it's not clear exactly where 44 will fall. So before any resolution is presented to the board, above and beyond that it will not close, I think it seems to be some more work that needs to be done, not only amongst the board, but in the community as well. So I'm sure you'll communicate that to Barbara, and anybody else here is free to communicate that to her. In terms of path forward, there are three choices. I think obviously we need to dedicate more time to discussing those three choices. We have a structure here. We've been doing it for as long as I've been around. I've actually been doing it a little more intensely over the last 4 years or so, of referring these kinds of issues to our committee structure for vetting. That's how they do it in Albany, that's how they do it in Washington, and that's how we do it here. So, Commissioner Shepard, my hope is that you will put the path forward on your agenda to have some conversation with the administration about those three choices so that the board can become more informed through your committee about those three choices, and so that we can make an informed decision. By the way, it won't just end there, because the choices have financial implications. So it wouldn't be a surprise if we made a referral to finance as well, or Vice President Powell, you'll consider that as well. So for anybody out there listening, there's a way to go on this whole issue of path forward, but it is now getting to the board where, with some degree of clarity, where we can make some decisions based on the 3 choices right now that have been presented to us.
President White, there also, I just wanted to point out that there is some additional information related to the presentation in the blue folders before you.
Thank you, Bo. You
So,
did.
question here.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I had one more question related to the 44 question. And this, unless you can answer this, it might be a question for Dr. Martino.
It's probably going to be a question for Dr. G.
Where are we in the registration process? Because this certainly impacts what parents are, I have no idea where we are at, what the deadlines are, what's going on with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We are actually in the process of running the lottery. The lottery is continuing over the next couple of weeks. Letters will be going out within the next 3 weeks to finalize school selections for families. And as you know, it's an iterative process, but it does affect School 44's selection as well as 41. We have been working very closely with both the School 41 community as well as 16 and School 44 because we're looking to increase engagement because we want to maximize seat utilization, encouraging people to select those schools.
So when you say it's an iterative process and letters are going out in 3 weeks, does that mean like, okay, here are the folks who got the seats, and then you look again, and then there's kind of a round 2, and then another set of letters?
What happens is we receive feedback from families if they haven't received their first choice, and they ask to kind of go back into the process. If we're able to do so, obviously to meet their needs, we then provide that opportunity. For high demand schools, we all know what schools are the highest demand schools. We are very transparent in sharing that those schools are closed, but we do look to provide second choice options in a pretty tight fashion, actually. So the rate of success is rather high.
Dr. G, when you say closed, you mean that families would have to be waitlisted?
That's correct.
And when you say accommodating the families who aren't happy with their first choice, you're talking about offering them available seats in under-chosen schools?
Correct.
The available seats throughout the zone?
That's correct.
And what percentage, approximately, of schools are kind of closed out after the first round, when the letters first, are we talking about 75% of the schools are filled up and you only have 25% left, or way more than that?
You know, it depends on the school, it depends on the zone. I can get that data for you because we do run those numbers annually because we like to track, even within high demand schools, first choice, second choice. So I'll run those numbers this week.
Okay, I'm just generally curious how much choice parents have after the letters have gone out, and, is it a huge selection of choices, or is it pretty narrow after?
It's actually, it tends to be rather narrow.
Okay.
There's this misconception that there's this broad range of families that are dissatisfied with the selection that they've obtained, when in fact the rate of first and second choice is quite high. The rate of success of obtaining your first or second choice is quite high. But I'll get those numbers for the entire board.
Commissioner Shepherd.
I just wanted to say to Bo and the rest of the team that our next ESA meeting is going to be on May 10th. That's 2 weeks from now. Now, to put you on a schedule and have this same presentation is not necessarily, I don't think, what we would be looking for. So we would definitely need some more in-depth information so that we can move forward on a choice. Obviously, it wouldn't be implemented next year because we're already into budget season. But please do not come and give us the same presentation. Because then I'm going to walk back down and I'm joking.
Commissioner, we made a concerted effort tonight to really try and, the goal was really to take that full report and to try our best to simplify it and get to the point. But I hear you as far as going deeper with it. So our team can work with you and Dr. Guillory to find out exactly how we want that to look in that forum.
Thank you. That'll work real well. All right, any other questions for Bo? All right, now, next, we would normally have our student report, but she actually is tied up at a student event, and our clerk, Dr. Lee, told her, listen, take care of business and don't bother, because she was going to try to come here at 7:30, and we said, no, don't worry about it. So we'll get a written report from her a little bit later on. I noticed Makita is back there. Makita, you have a report? Makita is our representative from PAC. That's Parent Advisory Council.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Shanae, I hope you got my reports. I had a little bit of problem. I kind of have two reports. One, tonight, I actually included a PowerPoint for the new commissioners about the Parent Advisory Council and for everyone else, you know, for the other commissioners as well. But kind of what it is about the Parent Advisory Council and what we do, who we are, and it includes some of our accomplishments that we've made over the years, so to speak. But the Parent Advisory Council, just to go over some of the things, you know, we are a group of parent volunteers. We're one of 3 board sanctioned parent groups. The other 2 are the Bilingual Educational Council and the Special Ed Parent Advisory Council. And our mission is to act as a conduit between parents and the district staff, superintendent's office, and the Board of Education for the benefit of all students within the Rochester City School District. And also to support at all levels the involvement of parents in decision-making related decisions to the education of all RCSD students. Some of the accomplishments, over the years, we had a hard time of kind of just doing the work and not kind of keeping a list of some of the things that we accomplished. So as a team, we try to come up every year when we do our retreat, is we talk about, you know, what our goals are for the new year and what we've accomplished from the previous year. So some of the things over the years that we accomplished as the team, as PAC, we revamped and overhauled the Title I process. We monitor the parent representation in schools via the Christmas tree reports, which is the scorecard on school parent groups and school-based planning teams. We assisted in the redesign of the elementary school report card. We work on the Code of Conduct Committee. We represent parents at the district level on the executive school-based planning team. We provide input and review of the school-based planning team manual and annual parent training. We have advocated over the years through the budget process and throughout meetings for music, arts, sports, and extracurricular activities, expeditionary learning, Montessori and IB programs, additional social and emotional support for our students, and improved customer service for our parents. We've lobbied RCSD leadership to revive the annual school expo in the original format, because at one point in time, we had to go to each individual schools to see if that was a school you wanted to attend. Parents were very frustrated with that. So we actually pushed for the expo to be what it was in the previous years, which is like it was this past year. We have had multiple sessions on a variety of topics that have come out in the district, most recently the body-worn cameras and SROs in our schools. We've served on multiple ad hoc committees. All of them are not named, but the old, when President White, you had all your ad hoc committees. I know I served on the Parent and Community Engagement Committee. There were other parents that served on the other ones. We've been part of CTF. We had parent involvement on the first phase of the FMP. I served on the Mayor's Early Educational Council. We also had input and help designing the RCSD Link app. We've signed multiple grants over the years, Title I, Title II, Title III, SIG grants. We've met with politicians, and we represent RCSD at the National Parent Teacher Association Conference. We plan and we organize training, forums, and informational sessions for our parents. We revamped the Title I annual event, which we used to do every year, and it was very low attendance. A majority of it was like maybe 200 parents, and 200 people which probably 190 were employees and actually people from the community agencies. And it was actually our idea. George Moses and I sat on that committee and we said, let's just revamp the whole thing. Just take the whole idea of what it was and revamp it and flip it. And then when we turned it into, let's do it in a park, and let's engage our parents and involve workshops, but still have fun things. Get the unions involved by donating money for the things that Title I couldn't pay for, the money from the unions would pay for. So when we revamped it, we said, let's do a park. Genesee Valley wasn't available at the time. The beach was the next best thing. We ended up at the beach. I came up with, call it a family affair, and then Willie said in the park, hence the name. So we went from having maybe 30 to 50 parents attend to our first year having over 3,000 attendees. Some other things that we do is we just continuously fight for our voices, the parent voice, to be heard, not just at the school building, but also at the district level, the state, and nationally. So that's kind of about PAC. There's some more slides, but those are some of the things about our accomplishments. But I also want to kind of go over some of the things that we've done the last couple of months since my last report out. The Executive School-Based Planning Team, which we are a part of, we had our annual training on March 15th, and we had over 200 participants. Almost every school was represented. Wilson and number 16 presented on how their team works. School 17 shared best practices for recruiting parents that represent the diversity of the school. And that kind of happened to be one of the ongoing themes of that meeting, is some of the concerns of our school-based planning teams feeling like there was not enough diversity on their team, and they also wanted to know how to recruit parents. I will say especially me, I was disappointed in the, there was not enough parents, I think, that actually were there. But I was very happy that schools actually were engaged and actually said, we want parents, how can we recruit them? And those were some of the topics and some of the things that we talked about on how we can provide that. And it was from us to parents in the audience that actually attended, giving those ideas. And I hope, we talked about how we revamp the school-based planning training for next year to make it beneficial for everybody, because sometimes there's new members, sometimes there's old members. So, but overall, I still think it was a success. We didn't get to do it last year, so I really, really enjoyed it. We also, the beginning of this month, we had our annual budget meeting. Actually, it's a little bit later. We usually have our parent PAC budget meeting earlier in the process, kind of before things get decided, before things start going into the budget. We kind of usually do it early, and that's something we started years ago. GC has been very involved in the process, and I want to thank him for all his work. Also, in February, we did parent leadership training with the support of the Office of Parent Engagement. It was a training that we started last year, something PAC really, really wanted to do, because we have a lot of new parents that are parent leaders for the first time, and they don't have that kind of support. So one of the things that we did was come up with this parent leadership training. But recently I've talked with Pam and the Office of Parent Engagement, and what I want to do in PAC, we're going to hold a meeting. It's going to be like a district-wide parent leaders training. Well, meeting or summit. We'll figure out what it's going to be called. But I'm going to invite all the presidents and vice presidents from the parent groups and school-based planning team members all together for us to talk about what are some of the challenges that we have, some sharing best practices amongst each other, and celebrating our successes that we have. And I'm hoping that we can make that an annual thing, or actually do it semi-annually, do it in the fall and do it, in the springtime. And also, this will give me an opportunity for us as the executive school-based planning team. We're trying to push doing the actual, what is the word I'm looking for? Well, when you do your voting for your new members, we just kind of want to change that. Instead of starting off the new year and not having your leadership, we just kind of want to try to have all your elections during May. So this will also give an opportunity to push that agenda as well. Also, we're working with the Office of Parent Engagement, district leadership, unions on invitational schools, making our schools invitational by design. This is a process that we kind of started back in the fall after we attended a conference in New Mexico. It was the Bilingual Council, Office of Parent Engagement, union leaders, the superintendent, and members of her leadership team that we all attended this conference. So there's some work still to be done, and we're working with all of us at the table, kind of at the executive school-based planning team, to actually work on doing the invitational schools. And I know one of the things you guys like to hear about is the parent or the Christmas tree report. We're kind of at the same level, 90% compliant, 92% for parent groups, 90% for school-based planning team. One of the things, and I'll keep saying it over and over, and we learned at school-based planning teams and through parents that we speak with, that we still have a way to go. Like, even looking at some of these schools and trying to contact parents, I find out from the parent group, more than half of them is district staff and not actual parents. Or I'm hearing that schools are not having PTA meetings. So it's not just about us getting names when we call and ask, who are your parent leaders? We want to make sure that the parents are at the table and actually have a voice. And we still have work to do in that area. So while I'm excited to see our numbers so high, we still have work to do as far as making sure that we have consistent parent voice at the table at our schools. That's about, oh, I don't want to forget about the body cameras, because we had a conversation about the body cameras back in November originally. We had a parent forum, and we talked about it, and PAC was trying to get feedback about the body cameras. And at the time, we didn't know the decision was already made about body cameras. But we had a follow-up meeting in February where, RPD came, and parents really discussed, excuse me, and legal was there, and Lori Baldwin, because there was a lot of questions regarding the body cameras, but it wasn't just about, RPD did a very good job of actually explaining about it, but it was more about the policies, who gets to see the video footage, and things like that. Those are the things parents were concerned about. And while there's a lot of questions going on back and forth, ultimately the parents that actually wasn't in attendance, they were like, why are we even discussing this? We just don't want police in our schools. So if that's anything I could get across, that was one of the things that came from that meeting. Besides just discussing all of that about our own body cameras, the parents in attendance actually said they don't want police in our schools anymore. So that's pretty much it.
Can I ask a question
sure,
real quick? Marquita, thank you for your report. And hopefully we'll get a copy of your PowerPoint. Can you email it to Shanae so that she could, okay.
Yeah,
Then she
you
can
didn't
send
get
it.
it? Okay, that's
She
what I
didn't
wanted
get
to
it, so
see.
we send it to her. She'll make sure we get
Okay.
it. You talked about some changes and doing a May election. May is like literally a week away, but is that enough time to give parents notices about the elections and how they can be involved and also participate in the election process and also participate in possibly running for some of those seats?
Well, actually, it's something that we've been kind of talking about over and over. What it is if they don't do it in May, our whole goal is that they actually do elections before the school year ends. So then they can have a transition period. Okay. So if there's some parents stepping down, that they can kind of train and
You're talking
have that
about then elections in the schools?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's what we're talking about. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, at the school level. So they're not waiting for the fall. So they can do work
so they
over
can
the summer.
start, yeah.
Correct, and to have the jump start.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Commissioner Elliott.
Marquita, there is, at one point, there was a clause in the union contract for parent representation. And I'm hoping that a similar clause is in the other contracts. How has PAC pursued that, or are you aware that at one point there should be parent representation when there is budget contract negotiations? So any discussions on that? Where has PAC been in that area?
Actually, we were made aware of that, And we also found out that the superintendent has the opportunity to actually add a parent to their negotiation team. So when we did that, we came up with a list of concerns, demands, and things we wanted. Actually, it was the RTA contract at that time, because that's the only one we knew about. So we had a separate team, ad hoc committee that actually worked on that and came up with all these ideas. And from what we know, none of them were accepted. But I don't know, I talked to Adam and he said he doesn't remember any of them being brought forth. So this was years ago. So it's been a couple of years, but we have not been invited to provide input, and we only know about RTAs, and we don't know when the contracts come up. We don't have a schedule.
I would think that PAC would want to be significantly involved in the negotiations of every contract.
I agree.
Because it benefits our children. Those contracts, you know, they typically are for their union membership. And what we've seen since I've been here, that this has been an adult organization, not a kid, a student organization. So if there is some way that in every one of those contracts, that there could be parent representation to speak from the perspective of the parent and the student, I think that's going to benefit everybody. So if some kind of way, you know, that can help, if you can identify some other people to work with the legal department on that, but I do think that in those negotiations, there needs to be parent representation.
I agree, and I think that if we can get an actual schedule of when that comes up, then PAC could come up with a way of actually including community input and parent input to bring forth to the table. And I definitely know that was something that we were interested in, but kind of got discouraged when we put through all that work and nothing came of it. But we have to stay steadfast.
Commissioner Shepherd?
Yeah, so some of my schools, they're having some issues with having their PTA meeting regularly. And that, you know, from what the feedback that I've gotten is because kids live all over the city, so that means their parents live all over the city, and it's difficult for them to come back, especially when they have multiple kids. So I just wanted to throw out a suggestion. I'm not sure if you're able to speak to different schools or help them plan where if you do an event every month that might be at some place that's kid-friendly, then you can have a meeting in a meeting room at that location and just set up some services for babysitting to watch them while the kids play. So that way they're able to bring all their kids can go do whatever, and you can have in a meeting room the meeting that is supposed to be for PTA. I know that you want to kind of encourage the environment of the school, but if it's not working, I just wanted to offer up the suggestion.
I totally agree with that, and that's some of the things that we've talked about in the past, and not also always having to be present, like actually physically there. Why can't you call in? Why can't we Skype? Like, we've talked about all those different things to actually have parents involved, that they don't also always have to physically be in the building. So I totally agree with that. And some of the suggestions that actually I made when we were at the school-based planning team event was when I was a PTA president, I used the opportunities when we actually were doing events. And I would actually say, I asked the principal, can I get 10 minutes or whatever? And I'll have my meeting right there because I got a captive audience. So we have to use it, you know, get it how we can, you know, wherever we can, and I agree. So if we could do that and make it easier, that's all I want. And I think we should just take more of those suggestions.
Okay, is there going to be any help? You don't have to answer it right now, but if there's any help that you're going to need from the board, please let us know how to assist with that.
I appreciate that.
Makita, on behalf of the whole board, I mean, I've said this multiple times, privately and publicly, but did you want to add something else? You really have our thanks and appreciation. I mean, you have a family, you come here late at night and try to keep us up to date, and the stuff that you've done extends beyond coming to these meetings. I mean, the Christmas tree report, that's legendary, the work that you all have done. And you've done it through different staff members over time, right? You guys have been consistently there. And you've been a voice for parents when we have not always been so parent-friendly. So again, on behalf of the board, I want to thank you, you and the members of PAC for doing what you do. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate, and I really appreciate the board's support and the staff and leadership of the RCSD.
Thank you, Makita. All right, I think we have a written bilingual report, is that right? Yes, there is a written report. I don't see the person who normally gives it, so just look in your materials. Is that on the web, or do we have the actual document in front of us? It's on board docs. All right, thank you. All right, well, that would move us to board reports. We can begin with Vice President Powell. Finance?
Thank you. I actually can speak briefly to the SLC because I was there yesterday. They invited parents to attend because they're planning for a Washington DC trip from May 6 to 11. There's about a dozen, maybe a dozen and a half students that are making the trip through an organization called Close Up, I think. And they will be partnering with students from other states all over the country. They'll have to share their hotel rooms with kids that they've never met before. It sounds really exciting.
Can I just add something on to the student SLC? I can't think of her name, but we were, the superintendent and I were over at the Career and Public Safety program in which she attends. And even in that group, she was talking about racial issues and racial equity. So I just wanted to share that wherever, not only when she sits in that seat, but wherever she is, she's talking about equity, racial equity. So I just wanted to put that on the table, and I commend her for that.
Yes. So that's what I have on that. I was just basically a fly on the wall, and it was a really interesting meeting. The Finance Committee met on April 19th. We reviewed the East High and the district's financial reports, as well as the quarterly change order report that was from January to March. The committee also discussed the School Climate Advisory Committee's recommendations for the 2018-19 budget. And lastly, the committee considered resolutions 790 through 808, resolution 811, 813, and 817. At this time, the Finance Committee does recommend for approval the district March financial report. I'd like to make a motion that we approve that.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been seconded by Commissioner Shepard. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. At this time, the financial reports for East High EPO, which were approved by the committee, I would like to move those for approval.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Commissioner Hallmark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. The Finance Committee recommended approval for the quarterly change order report, January through March. I move that we approve the change order report and financial implications.
It's been moved by Vice President Powell. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Funches. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. We have one budget resolution from 792 to 808 are facilities, mostly the architectural work for new projects coming online. They'll be doing the work this summer for projects coming online next summer. And we have some final payments. We have miscellaneous resolutions, again, 811, 813, 817. We also had one resolution for procurement and supply, which was resolution 791. There were questions at the committee, and answers were not readily available. So rather than hold it up, we decided to advance it to the full board without recommendation. Since then, information has become available and has been distributed to board members. So although the committee's official position is without recommendation, I encourage every board member to, vote based on the new information that is available now that was not available to us then. The next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled to be May 17th, and I'm not sure when. It's usually 5:30 unless we follow some other committee. That concludes my Finance Committee report.
Thanks, Vice President Powell. Commissioner Elliott?
The Community and Intergovernmental Relations Committee will meet on May 22nd. There are a number of items that we are going to be discussing at that meeting. And then just on a point of personal privilege, I apologize for not being here on time. I was over at the Rochester Early Childhood Education Center they're celebrating literacy through the arts. And I really enjoyed that event. Here, this is preschool children, and here again, where, you know, in the society where people say that parents are not involved, let me debunk that and just come out saying that's a straight lie, because the place was filled with parents, and Commissioner Shepard can attest to that. So anytime people tell you that parents are not involved in their children's education, trust me when I tell you that that is an outright lie. So I want to commend the team over at the Rochester Early Childhood Education Center for putting on a great event. And Mike, that was my first time over there since the renovations. While I still don't like the location of having our young people over there, I think it's the school, the facility is, you all did a great job on that. And parents seems to be pleased with the site. And then just one other piece, and this is to Miss Allen, who's over at the Rochester Early Childhood Education. As I was going through, there was a mother with her son who was looking for Miss Allen. Apparently, Miss Allen is his teacher. Now, he had already saw Miss Allen, but wanted to see Miss Allen again and again and again. So I would say that's the kind of relationship that we want our teachers to have with our children, where they're always saying, Miss Allen, I want to see Miss Allen, Miss Allen. And so that kind of relationship is going to have an impact on him forever in his life. So it was a great event. I'm sorry I missed the arts program here, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Elliott. Commissioner Funches?
Yes, good evening. The policy committee schedule for this month was canceled due to a lack of quorum. But I'd like to draw your attention to some policy proposals presented this evening for your consideration. For adoption, I'd like to present a revision of the Student Records and Privacy Policy 5500 in accordance with New York State School Boards Association recommendations. The revisions address New York State records retention requirements, schedules, and types of records involved, and disposition of district records. And also to present as a discussion item, the new proposed gender equity policy. This policy proposed is based on the sample of sexual harassment policy from the New York State School Boards Association, but is more comprehensive in addressing the overall discrimination based on gender, gender identity, and gender expression. A policy specifically regarding Title IX is legally required, and the proposed policy fulfills that requirement. The next policy committee meeting will be Wednesday, May 16th at 5:30 p.m.
Bless you. Thank you, Commissioner Funches. Commissioner Hallmark?
Thanks. Yeah, I'd like to say that on April 12th, the Governance Committee convened as a special meeting of the whole. At the meeting, the board discussed the committee's purpose, the evaluation schedules of the superintendent, general counsel, and members of the board staff for the year. We made adjustments to our structure and schedule of the standing committees. We proposed some professional development topics. We're still sort of collating those for the upcoming year. And our communication protocols, as well as discussing assessment options with parents. In addition to the scheduled topics of discussion, the board discussed possibilities of reinstating the Human Resources Committee. We've tasked General Counsel Carl Christoph to draft a purpose for the proposed Human Resources Committee that would reflect the norms used elsewhere in similar committees and that would reflect the discussion and concerns that we had during that meeting. Our next Governance Committee is scheduled Thursday, June 7th, and as a point of personal privilege, I had the pleasure of attending quite a lot of trainings in this last month, and some great events like the 19th Ward's Spelling Bee and the Superintendent's Conference Day, but I want to call out some very special trainings. I've been spending a lot of time looking at a lot of the teacher trainings that are going on around the district, and there was an excellent one that happened at RIA on early childhood, on play and collecting data about play that shows how you can see what learning is happening during play and how important all of that is. I want to give kudos to Steve Lemoyne, who planned and implemented a great social studies conference in which Dr. Terrence Roberts attended. He was one of the Little Rock Nine. And also Rochester's Teacher Center, which was just this week, and Dr. Joyce King led that, and that was also an excellent. So there's some really, really good teaching and training going on among the teachers in the district, and I want to call that out and thank folks for that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner LeBron?
I actually want to start with a point of privilege, just to give kudos to a few schools. And so I'll start with school number 10. They hosted a New American ceremony, and I got to go along with lots of district staff that was there. And so lots of people became New Americans and took the oath. And that was really cool. They had third graders do a song and presentation to them as well. Kudos to Wilson High School today. They had a If You Can See It, You Can Be It. It was an event that was partially out of Cuomo's office, and it's an adaptation of Bring Your Sons and Daughters to Work Day, but this was specifically geared towards young women of color and different occupations that they can be. So it was one of the presenters there. It was from 11 to 2, along with a lot of minority business women owners. So that was a really cool event. And also kudos to the 44 Panthers step team, because they won for their age division, which was last week, same time as the spelling bee, so I couldn't go to the 19th ward one. But very exciting for them. So the audit committee did not meet in the month of April, but the next audit committee is actually scheduled for next Tuesday, May 2nd at 5 o'clock. At that meeting, we're going to be meeting with Freed Mavix, which is the external auditor that we've requested and have approved to review the audit plan for June 30th, and his independent auditor, that team's. We're encouraging all board members to attend this specific meeting because I have asked for a status update from the finance organization and human resources on the status of the Office of State Comptroller's recommendations that were done last year. So I'm asking for an update, what's been done, what's not been done, why it hasn't been done. And I would also like to request, and this wasn't in the original request when I sent this out, or had Anissa send it out for me, but I would like to request that Barbara Dean Williams also be there, because there's some accountability that we also should be holding all of our staff and team to. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Shepherd?
So the Excellence in Student Achievement Committee, we held a meeting of the whole on Thursday, April 12th. We discussed academic achievement after the second marking period for cohorts to figure out what our projections for graduation would be. We talked about expanded learning programs and providers and progress with regard to the diversity hiring initiative that we have. So I wanted to thank Ray, Beth, and Harry for coming out. Also, what we are starting to do in our ESA committee is have students come in for a couple of minutes in the beginning just to speak about certain programs throughout the district. I thought it would be a good way for the board just to hear some of the resources that we have supported, and to see how it's been impacting our students, and to see if we would need to replicate anything that we're hearing. So we did have 3 students come this past meeting who have received the scholarships to MCC, Monroe Community College. Each student, they do plan to do the 2+2 program, so they'll be going on continuing their studies beyond the K through 12 level, which is exciting. Our next board meeting, or our next ESA meeting, is going to be on Thursday, May 10th at 5:30. And just as a point of personal privilege, I did want to shout out our Rochester City School District Theater-wide program. I was able to go see their production of Beauty and the Beast this past weekend at East High School. You know, I don't know how many of you have participated in extracurricular activities while in school, but these were kids that were elementary and some high schoolers, and they're going to school, and then after school, they're spending 4 hours rehearsing. It was a phenomenal production. They have phenomenal costumes, and it was just amazing. And so I wanted to shout out the director, who is Taylor Harding, and also all the students that put in a lot of work behind that effort. They did a 3-day production, so kudos to them.
Thank you, Commissioner. My report will be very brief. It will focus on actually 2 things. One, you all know that we have a pretty intense budget season. We're already underway in our pretty intense budget season. We have meetings on April 30th, Tuesday, May 15th, Wednesday, June 13th, That's a joint budget hearing with City Council. And then the budget approval date is June the 19th. That's when the City Council is set to approve the budget. But I can put all that in writing. One thing I can't put in writing and is not as articulate if it's in writing is thank you to all the staff. We're getting close to the finish line in terms of the budget. And some of you are here in this room. On behalf of the board, I want to look you in the eye and say thank you, because I couldn't do that by text or by email. It wouldn't carry the same weight as it carries by me looking at you directly and saying thank you on behalf of the board. I know it's a lot of work. You were given a Herculean task. I think the budget deficit originally was projected at like $60-something million. I see you back there, Everton, kind of hiding behind folks. But he has been working diligently. He and a lot of other people have been working very diligently. And with respect to board staff, Kalia, I know you're probably not even watching this. You're probably home getting some much-deserved sleep. But Kalia, that's right, she'll probably want to talk, I would leave her out of it. She has worked really hard. She's a member of our staff. I know you all know that. And it's difficult. It's a difficult job. She's got questions coming at her from 20 different directions, and she's trying to get responses, and it's a difficult job. So, Callie, if you happen to be awake, or if you don't have anything to do when you come in tomorrow, you want to watch this on videotape, on behalf of the board, I want to say thank you. And I mentioned this earlier because I made a mistake earlier. We were talking about volunteers and the importance of volunteers. Nydia and Ricky, thank you for the effort. For those of you who don't know, before you all got here, many of you got here, we had about an hour presentation thanking our volunteers and our organizations and our students throughout the community. And that was, I don't think Ricky and Nydia would take credit for that idea. I think what they said is, during their presentation, that the volunteers had suggested that that be done. And we can't, as I said during my welcoming remarks, we can't do this alone. I tell people, there is no Superman, there is no Wonder Woman that can fix this. It's going to take a community of people. And we had those people in this room today. And so on their behalf, and everybody, Kalia, Nikki, Ricky, Nydia, and all those folks that I didn't mention, as you all know, I play a song at the end of our board meetings. And that song is going to be by Big Sean. The song is One Man Can Change the World. So at the end of the meeting, you'll hear that song. If you don't have it on your iPod or your iPhone or whatever, you need to get it on there, because one man, one woman cannot do this alone. But if there is a determined man or woman that wants to make a difference and grab an oar, like I said, we all can get to shore. So enough of the speeches. Now we're going to consider resolutions. Can I get a motion to discuss resolution 748 to 760? Those are the EPO resolutions.
So moved.
It's been moved by Commissioner Hallmark, seconded by Commissioner Vice President Powell. Any questions or comments regarding those resolutions? There being no questions or comments, all those in favor of resolutions 748 to 760, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Next, I need a motion to discuss resolution 761 to 783. For those of you who don't know, those are Human Capital Initiative resolutions.
So moved.
Yeah, we still have a quorum. It's been moved by Commissioner Hallmark, seconded by Vice President Powell. Any questions or comments regarding Human Capital Resolution 761 to 783? There being no questions or comments, all those in favor of the Human Capital Initiative Resolution 761 to 783, say aye.
Aye.
I would point out, and I'm sorry, but I was talking to Commissioner, 760 and 758, they look like they may be the same ones.
760.
Excuse me, 758 and 772, sorry. I think they're the same people.
Yeah, no, I was getting ready to say Big Sean or Little Sean. He left, but did you get her question?
I did not.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, repeat that one more time.
758 under the EPO, under East, and then 772 in HCI. I want to know if those are the same people. So is that the way it works?
Good evening, Commissioners. The ones on 772, which are HCI, those should have been eliminated because the EPO puts their own on. So we took those off of ours. Okay. So, all right.
All right.
Thank you.
They're not there anymore.
All right. Can I get a motion to discuss 784 to 790? No, we did do a vote. Yes, we did, 761, but Cynthia asked a question afterwards.
She didn't get it, she still needs it.
She still needs it, she still needs.
But we did take a vote, but it's, okay, all those in favor of resolution 761 to 783, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
760, I voted no on. I vote no.
To 783?
No, okay, let's back up. What happened was, as my kids used to say, we passed resolution 748 to 760.
Yes.
Commissioner Elliott came in and asked a question about a vote that had already been taken, but Sean responded to that question. So you had the vote for that one.
Yes.
I believed, and if we didn't, my mistake, I believe we also took a vote on 761 to 783. Okay, but okay, no, but it's important that you know the vote. So let's do it again. Can I get someone to move those human capital initiatives?
So moved.
Been moved by Commissioner Hallmark, seconded by Vice President Powell. All those in favor of resolution 761 to 783, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
767.
Commissioner Shepard? you
Yeah,
have an
and a
update?
no for 774.
Thank you. All right, I need a motion to discuss resolution 784 to 790.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Hallmark. Is there a second by Commissioner Funches? Any questions or comments regarding the additional pay resolutions? There being no questions or comments, all those in favor of resolution 784 to 790, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
No to all.
Got that, Madam Clerk? Yes. Thank you. I need a motion to discuss the budget resolutions, which Vice President Powell has reviewed already. That's 791. Is there a motion? Vice President Powell, you want to make that motion?
Oh, by all means, I'll make that
All right.
motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Funches. Any questions or comments regarding resolution 791?
I would just say, it's not strictly speaking a budget resolution, but it's a highly technical aspect of the General Accounting Standards Board requirements that we have since learned that there are other ways of implementing. If it's confusing to you and you weren't at the Finance Committee, by all means, come up to the meeting afterwards. Everton and I will try to explain it to you. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding resolution 791?
No, but I'm sorry, can I interrupt you very quickly? I'm sorry, Commissioner. Back to resolution 790, which I know you guys just voted. I'm sorry, I couldn't hold it in. I've been drinking.
I'm sorry, point of order. Did we vote on this one?
No, we haven't yet.
Can you hold your
Oh, I thought you guys just voted on it.
on 791? We had a motion and a second
No,
on
we haven't
791.
voted on 791. She made a comment.
I'm talking about 790.
I know, but
Okay.
hold on.
If
What
we could
she's
finish
saying
what we
is, a
started.
point of order, she wants to make sure we have the vote on 791, and then we can go back to
Okay,
790.
all
Is that
right,
all
I apologize. Go
No,
ahead,
that's right.
yes,
No worries,
yes,
no
go
worries,
ahead.
no worries. All right, any further comments or questions regarding resolution 791? There being no further questions or comments, all those in favor of resolution 791, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Now, Commissioner LeBron, you had a question about 790?
Yes, I want to go back to 790 on page 29 and 789 specifically, because there's a couple of things in there. One, the 1 to 200th of a pay rate in 108 hours. That's not an actual number mathematically in terms of what we're paying people. So I would just ask that we actually put salaries, exact numbers in there. So I don't know who does that or who's responsible, but I don't even feel like the board should even be approving that because we don't know what we're approving in terms of numbers. We're just approving that someone's going to get paid 108 hours, but we don't actually know what their pay is going to be. The other thing I want to address is the curriculum development. Did I get to that part yet? Hold on. Not the curriculum, the general funds that is coming out of operations of registrars. I thought we put registrars back in the schools. So I'm very confused about why we're hiring additional teachers to do registrars when we have registrars as titles and pay. And it's coming from general funds.
Okay, so what I want to do, if it's okay with you, Commissioner LeBron, is I want to take these one at a time, but very briefly. 790, her question about 790. Can someone answer that? About how the pay is described?
Oh,
Is that right?
it says 1 out of 200th. What does that mean?
hopefully he can answer.
So those pay rates are actually reflected in the contracts. So we align their additional pay with the contractual language.
I understand that, but we're approving something that we don't know what that actually means in terms of monetary numbers. So even though it's in the contract that we have to pay them 1/200th of their pay rate for 30 hours, what does that mean right now? Yeah, I want to know how much it is. That could be anything.
So
that's like 1/4 of my salary, but my salary could be different this year than it is next year than it is. I want to know the actual number, and I don't ever want to see any of us approving 1/200th of someone's salary when we don't know what that number actually is.
Understood.
Okay.
And to your second question around, these are central registrars. So central registrars provide direct support and
To
master
the
schedule.
school registrars.
Yeah, that's right.
But they're teachers, and we're also paying them, it says teacher, so are these teachers that are not going to be in school, and we're paying teachers to do registrar work? Do we have
Registrars are, they're actually certificated teachers, but their title is registrar.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Yeah, Commissioner Shepard.
I just wanted to say something to you, Commissioner LeBron. I totally understand what you mean when you want the actual number. For me, I don't really think that knowing the number, even though it's good information, would actually change or sway the vote because that person was already chosen. But I just wanted to say that I totally get what you mean. But it's a good point of reference. But I mean, if it's aligning with the contractual language, I'm cool with that too. So maybe you could put both.
Ray, and you don't have to answer this now. Can that be changed so that it reflects in real dollars what that amount is? Just briefly.
Wouldn't that be an AC? But
Yeah, I know, but I don't see Harry here.
We can.
Oh, I didn't
Mary.
see behind Steve. Is there some reason why Ray's answering this and you're not? I didn't see you behind Steve. I'm sorry, Steve. You're kind of in my line of say. Yeah, you're head man. I wasn't gonna say nothing, but
We can.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. If Ray is the right person to
just want
answer,
the actual number.
I know the answer.
Okay,
so
all right, all right.
If, with your indulgence,
sure.
we can do so. It's obviously there's variability by person because each person has a different salary.
Exactly, and that's really what I want to know. I want to know what we're spending. It's not necessarily that I'm going to deny it. I just also want to know the actual cost of every single person that we're talking about, because this reflects multiple times through multiple resolutions without an actual number. And when we're talking about this budget deficit, which I'm not convinced that we've closed yet, I need to understand how we're spending money. So that's why I'm making that request. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. So that I need you all's help. I'm trying to figure out where we ended up. We were on 791.
791.
We were on 791. Did you get a vote on 791? Yes. All right. Hey, Steve, listen. They should be a big head association because I would be a charter member. So don't worry about that. Let's see. I need a resolution to discuss. I need a motion to discuss resolution 792.
So
It's been moved by Commissioner Funches, seconded by Commissioner Elliott. Any questions or comments regarding that resolution? No? All right, all those in favor of Resolution 792, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, I need a motion to discuss Resolution 793 to 809.
So moved.
Been moved by Commissioner Hallmark, seconded by Commissioner Funches. Any questions or comments regarding those particular sets of resolutions? There being no questions or comments, all those in favor of Resolution 793 to 809 say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And finally, we have other. That would be Resolutions 810 to 819. Can I get a motion? Commissioner Powell, Vice President Powell, second by Commissioner Hallmark. Is this where somebody, are these the donations or no? Is there any donations in there, Liz?
No donations.
No donations.
No donations.
No. I just want to make sure where there's no donations in there, Liz. Okay, all right.
If the floor is open for
Powell?
comment, though, I do want to
Yep.
point out that this is where the policy resolution is housed, so it's the last chance to speak to policy.
Any questions or comments regarding that policy or any other part of that resolution, those resolutions? All those in favor of resolutions 810 to 819, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
I abstain 8:16.
All right. We're done with the consideration of resolutions.
Oh, wait.
I'm sorry?
Aren't you supposed to, isn't it 8:11 you're supposed to?
Which?
You said 8:11.
I put 8:16 on my paper,
I think
so
it changed.
8:11 I've stayed. Okay,
Thank you, Commissioner Elliott. You indicated you had a point of personal privilege?
I do. When you mentioned Nydia, it reminded me that, of the United Way's 100th birthday celebration. Nydia was featured in the video as well as myself for the United Way. And I saw that the goal of the United Way here at the district is 300,000, but that it only has raised so far 66,000. And I just want to talk about the importance, and hopefully people are listening to my conversation this evening. I really want to talk about the value and importance of contributing to the United Way. If it was not for the United Way and funding Lewis Street Center, I'm not sure if I would be here today. And so it really makes a difference in the lives of the people within our community. Just to be able to go to Lewis Street as a teenager and hang out with the people there. It was the people there who took me to MCC to register for school. It was the people there who taught me how to drive. It was the people there that I could talk to. And we still, 40 years later, 40 plus years later, I'm still in contact with the people, the counselors who helped us. We still have an annual cookout, and we still have a Christmas party. And so I'm just one testimony, one of the work that the United Way does. There are tons of people. I don't give here, but I give at the leadership level at Baden Street Settlement. And I just want to, your contributions really makes a difference in the lives of the people who live in this community. And I need to be as assertive and as enthusiastic as I can to really ask that people who have not contributed, that they contribute to the United Way. Your money, your dollars are really making a difference in the lives of the people in this community. And since 1918, and when it started, it's been making a difference in the lives of people in this community. And just for, I'd just like to brag a little bit. Baden Street Settlement has been a partner with the United Way since 1918. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Elliott. There's no unfinished business. The new business is the proposed sexual harassment policy. Commissioner Genesis, you're here? Yeah. Wow, that is dedication. That is dedication, my goodness. We have your written report. Did you want to, I thought, no, there wasn't a written, do you want to provide a quick summary of what's going on? You came all the way. You don't have to.
You don't have
to, but if you wanted to. First of all, it's amazing that you're here. But if you want to offer up some comments about what's been going on, feel free to do that.
So just going off by our yesterday's agenda. So we talked about RCSD activities and requests. And what that is, sorry, I'm out of breath. I just ran up the stairs.
Take your time.
So we talked about how Parks and Recreation of the City of Rochester, we're meeting up with them because they want to talk about renovations. They want to talk to the students about what they think that should be done, where the best places are for things to go in the city. And like, they want, you know how there's stops for like bikes and stuff? So they want to know where's the best place to put those, where is it safe out in the streets when students or when young kids ride their bikes. Just trying to talk to them and see like what kind of plan we can make with them in order to build or to renovate our city. And another thing was the director of food services. They want us to taste the food for next year. So we will be meeting with them May 23rd at 5 o'clock, right after our meeting. And we're just gonna be tasting the food and seeing and giving them advice, giving them like pass or fail, basically about what we think about the food. The executive school-based planning team. So I went to because I'm on school-based planning team at my school, and there was a training, and I went. It was I don't know when it was a while back, but I went, and I saw that there were no students on this school-based planning team, on the executive one. So I asked the question, like, where's your student representation? And they were like, oh, like, good question, basically, good question. So now they've invited the students to go to the meetings. So they're the first of each month, and they're at 5:30. And we have 3 students, including me, or aside from me, who will be attending. I want to go every time, but you know I can't. I'm busy doing other things. I'm in sports, school-based planning team, SLC, Board of Education, and I'm like, I have the heart, but I don't. My body can't do it. So I can't be everywhere at once.
We understand that.
So I know Alexander Powell, Commissioner Powell's son, or Vice President Powell's son, is going. Another student, Harmony Shahid, and another student from Douglas. She's new, so I haven't remembered her name. I'm more of a face person, not a name person. So we will be attending the next meeting right before our trip, so that's great. And talking about our trip, we're going to Washington, D.C., and we're really excited. We're really excited, we really are. And, you know, they wanted to thank the district for allowing us to go on this trip. We will be working, but, you know, I think we'll learn a lot out there. We'll be more hands-on, and we're going to be with other students from around the country, so that's really good. We get to see what point of views they bring from their states, and just really, I think we just think it's fun and a great thing to do. And Friday we will depart from the close-up field trip, and then we're going to visit the National Museum of African American History. We're gonna visit that, and what else? We're gonna visit that, and we talked about that, and it was just funny. This is like totally off topic, but it was funny because since we're flying over there, by the way, so you know they gave us that good. So since we're not on a bus, we're gonna have to like walk around with our luggage. And they were laughing because at the museum, you know, they have to go through the luggage, and they're gonna take everything out of, like they're gonna take everything, like your underwear, all that. It's gonna be exposed. So we're all just laughing. That's just something off topic. Oh, and yesterday, the director of English, Mr. Scott Robinson, I believe, he came in and spoke to us about how English 4 will be replaced with mosaics. And I don't know if everyone knows the goal of the course. No?
Yes.
Yeah? Yeah? Okay, so I don't have to read it.
I'm sorry, but if you do have it, can you give it for other folks who may not be aware?
Yeah. No problem. So the goal of this course is to have every graduate of the Rochester City School District leave us as a civic leader who has a sound understanding and appreciation of whom they are and their value within their community. This will empower the student to become more open-minded towards the world and to recognize that we are all different, but we all have many of the same basic needs. Students will be exposed to the high demands of rigorous studying, including but not limited to such activities as mindful seminars and discussions, research-based investigative work, expressive forms of sharing learning, public speaking, purposeful community service, chosen and performed by every student, independent and group work, and reading and writing at college level expectations. The core of the class will revolve around the routine discussions based upon cultural topics, current events, and class readings. Students will reflect frequently, utilizing responses to capture immediate thoughts and then later incorporating these learnings into a more comprehensive artistic expression of learning. And that's what Mosaics is. That's the course description. And they asked us basically what we would like to see added or incorporated into this course to ensure student achievement. And everyone really, really liked this idea, and especially me as a student at School Without Walls, because basically what this course is basically what School Without Walls is. It's about knowing who you are, knowing knowing your value within your community, knowing how to work with the community, and really I think it's a really good class to take, and I'm happy that it's replacing Mosaics, and or replacing English 4, and so are the other students. They are really happy about it. The only question we had about it was that, what about the students that are taking AP Literature, and what will happen, because it's required in order to graduate. So we just wanted to know, okay, what if I'm taking AP Literature? Do I still have to take this? And we were just asking questions, really getting clarification. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I can remember. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Again, thanks for your dedication. I don't know if I'd have come in if I was you. Thank you very much. You can go home now.
Or you can stay and catch your breath.
So our next business meeting is May 24th. I'm sorry. Yeah.
The agenda, maybe nobody has anything to say about it.
Yeah, they didn't.
New business?
Yeah, they didn't have anything to say. I asked about the proposed. Yep. Yep. No, right when she came in, I asked, and then, did anybody want to make any comment about the new proposed sexual harassment policy?
About what? The new sexual
Under new
harassment
business.
policy.
It's up for discussion. No?
Yeah, I would, let me just point out here, another point of personal
Sure.
privilege. Speaking about sexual harassment, Baden Street Settlement is having Dr. Celeste Kidd as a featured speaker of the 117th annual meeting of the Board of Directors of Baden Street Settlement. Dr. Kidd was one of the women at U of R around sexual harassment issues, and then made one of the featured persons on Time Magazine. So she will be our featured speaker on May 10th at noon at the Holiday Inn.
All right, thank you.
Shameless plug, but I don't care.
It was a plug, but it wasn't shameless. It was all right. So our next meeting is May 24th at 6:30 p.m. Of course, you can go to the board's webpage at www.rcsdk12.org. Now, as you all know, the laws of New York State allow us, like any client who has an attorney, to go in and have confidential conversations with our attorney about litigation. So we're going to do that, but on top of that, the law requires that we go into executive session if we're going to discuss a particular person.
Motion.
So I need a motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Now, I want to warn you all that for those of you who have nothing better to do tonight, that we will not be coming back up here to adjourn. Instead, what we will do is we will adjourn from downstairs. So if you're not inclined to wait for us, good night. Todd, you got the song for us? You still around, Todd? Maybe not. Oh, wait, there he is. Good night, everybody.
They used to tell me.
Thanks, Todd.